Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Let's do it.
So today we're tackling a really fascinating and kind of controversial topic, the world of DMX, his relationship with Jay-Z,
Right.
and some pretty serious accusations about how the music industry maybe played a role in his struggles.
Yeah, it's a story of ambition, rivalry, power. All those things that make for a great deep dive.
Exactly. And, for those who maybe aren't super familiar with DMX, think late 90s hip-hop, that raw energy,
Yeah.
those hard-hitting lyrics.
That Barkman legendary.
Oh, yeah, he explodes onto the scene, signs with Def Jam, which was like the place to be for hip-hop back then.
And his rise is fast.
Super fast.
Like meteor fast. He's dropping hit after hit, but they're whispers.
Really?
Yeah, even within Def Jam, some people are skeptical.
What, like they didn't think he was the real deal?
Some doubted his longevity as a rapper.
Wow.
Some even questioned his talent.
Seriously?
Yeah, even Jay-Z, who would later become president of Def Jam.
Wow.
He had his doubts at first. That's crazy to think about, like DMX, this huge icon.
Right.
And even Jay-Z wasn't sure about him at first.
It's wild, but it speaks to how different DMX's style was, how groundbreaking.
Totally. But DMX, he proves everyone wrong,
Oh, yeah?
becomes massive.
Hmm.
But at the same time, Jay-Z's climbing the ladder at Def Jam. So you've got these two powerful figures, both super ambitious, both hungry for success.
And that, according to Irv Gotti, is where things start to get messy.
Okay, so Irv Gotti, he's a key player in all of this, right?
Absolutely close friend and collaborator of DMX.
Right.
And he claims that as Jay-Z gains more power within Def Jam, there's a shift.
What kind of shift?
Well, he starts to see DMX as competition.
Like a threat to his own position.
Exactly. And according to Gotti, this is where the seeds of distrust are sown.
So you're saying it's more than just like a friendly rivalry?
Oh, yeah. Gotti's suggesting something much darker. He's saying that Jay-Z might have actively tried to sabotage DMX's career.
Oh, hold on. That's a serious accusation.
It is. And we need to be careful here.
Of course we're dealing with allegations.
Right. But Gotti's claims, they raise some important questions about how power operates in the music industry.
Like how far would someone go to stay on top?
Exactly. And what happens to those who get in the way.
So let's unpack this a little bit. What specifically does Gotti say Jay-Z did to try and hold DMX back?
Well, he points to DMX's legal troubles.
Right? DMX had a lot of run-ins with the law.
And Gotti suggests that some of those might have been orchestrated, or at least made worse, by Jay-Z.
Like he's implying that Jay-Z might have had something to do with those legal problems.
That's the implication. And, in the music industry, image is everything.
For sure.
Even the perception of criminal activity can really damage an artist's career.
So Gotti's theory is that Jay-Z might have used those legal vulnerabilities to weaken DMX's position.
Exactly.
Right.
Maybe even leak information to the press or make sure certain cases were pursued more aggressively.
That's pretty messed up if it's true.
It is, and it gets even more complicated.
How?
Well, Gotti also claims that Jay-Z used his influence within Def Jam to limit DMX's opportunities.
Like what kind of opportunities are we talking about?
Maybe delaying album releases, restricting his promotional budget.
So he's saying that even though DMX was super successful, he might have been facing these roadblocks internally.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And that could have had a huge impact on his career trajectory.
Absolutely. It's one thing to be competing with other artists,
Right.
but it's a whole other level to be battling forces within your own label.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We need to dig deeper into the context of the music industry at the time.
Okay, so let's talk about what was going on in the late 90s, early 2000s that might be relevant to this story.
This was a period when black artists were starting to gain more control over their music and their careers.
Yeah.
The idea of black ownership in the music industry was gaining momentum.
Right, so you have this backdrop of social and economic change, this push for black empowerment.
Exactly. And this is where Gotti's accusations get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
He claims that Jay-Z, along with Diddy, might have actually worked to undermine the creation of a black-owned music distribution company.
Whoa, hold up, that's huge. Distribution is like the lifeblood of the music industry.
Absolutely. It's how artists get their music to the masses, how they get paid.
So Gotti is saying that Jay-Z maybe saw this black-owned company as a threat to his own power.
That's the allegation. And it raises a lot of questions about his motives and his commitment to black empowerment.
This is getting really complex.
It is. And it speaks to a larger issue of how power dynamics operate even within a genre like hip-hop.
Right, hip-hop, which was born out of resistance and this desire for self-determination.
Exactly. So you have this tension between the ideals of the genre and the realities of the industry.
And DMX, he's caught right in the middle of all of this.
Right, this incredibly talented and outspoken artist trying to navigate a system that might be rigged against him.
It makes you wonder how much of his personal struggles, his battles with addiction, his legal troubles were a direct result of these pressures and betrayals.
That's a question we're going to explore as we go deeper into this deep dive.
Okay, so we've laid out some pretty heavy accusations.
We have.
Now we need to look at the evidence, what supports these claims, what contradicts them.
Exactly. And we need to hear from DMX himself. What did he have to say about the industry? The people he felt had wronged him?
His words, his music, they offer a powerful lens through which to understand this whole story.
Absolutely. So stay tuned as we continue to unpack the world of DMX, Jay-Z, and the dark side of the music industry.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
It's fascinating, isn't it? This whole idea of black ownership and how it plays into this story.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a period, the late 90s, early 2000s, where you had black artists achieving massive success.
Right, commercially they were killing it.
But the infrastructure, the real power behind the scenes, that was still largely controlled by
established players.
Exactly. So this black-owned distribution company, it wasn't just about business, it was about
shifting the balance of power.
Right, giving black artists more autonomy.
Control over their own destinies. It was a huge deal.
And you can see how that would be seen as a threat by those who benefited from the existing system.
Absolutely challenged the hierarchy, the way things had always been done.
And that's really the crux of Irv Gotti's argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that Jay-Z, by allegedly trying to undermine this black-owned company, was essentially choosing to protect his own position.
Even if it meant potentially stifling black economic empowerment.
It's a pretty bold claim.
It is. It goes beyond just personal rivalry. It speaks to these larger systemic issues.
And it makes you wonder, what was DMX's perspective on all this?
Right. Was he aware of these alleged power plays? Was he vocal about the lack of black ownership in the industry?
Did he ever talk about it?
Well, DMX was definitely outspoken about the industry's exploitative practices.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not specifically about distribution, but his music is full of critiques of the system.
Like that line, "The industry will break you down, it's a matter of time."
Exactly. There's this sense of frustration, this distrust that comes through in his lyrics.
It's almost like he could see what was happening around him. He could feel the pressure.
Yeah, and to really understand the weight of Gotti's accusations, I think we need to look closer at DMX's relationship with Def Jam.
Okay, so DMX signs with Def Jam, which is a huge deal for his career.
Huge.
But if Gotti's right, and there's this tension with Jay-Z, how does that impact DMX's experience at the label?
Gotti claims that as Jay-Z's influence within Def Jam grew, DMX felt increasingly marginalized.
Like he wasn't getting the support he deserved.
Right, think about it. You've got this incredibly talented artist selling millions of records.
Yeah.
But according to Gotti, he's not getting the same level of support, the same opportunities as other artists on the label.
So he's basically saying that DMX was facing these internal roadblocks.
Potentially even sabotage.
And that could have a huge impact on an artist's career.
Absolutely. It's one thing to compete with other artists. It's another to be battling forces within your own label.
And DMX, he was so raw, so emotionally vulnerable in his music. You can imagine how that kind of environment, that lack of trust and support, could have fueled his struggles.
His addiction, his legal troubles, it all becomes intertwined.
It's heartbreaking to think about.
And it raises questions about the ethics of the music industry, the responsibility of labels to protect their artists.
To nurture them, not just exploit them.
Exactly. And it reminds us that behind all the glamour, the awards, the money, there are real people with real lives.
And the decisions made by those in power can have devastating consequences.
It's not just about hits and sales, it's about the human cost of this business.
And then there's the whole other layer of the rumors surrounding DMX's death.
The whispers of an industry sacrifice.
That's some heavy stuff.
It is. But before we dive into that, I think we need to look at DMX's own words. His statements about the industry, the people he felt had wronged him.
Because his words, spoken with his raw honesty, his vulnerability, they might hold the key to understanding all of this.
They might help us separate fact from fiction evidence from speculation.
Okay, so what did DMX have to say?
Well, there are a few things that really stand out. One that's really haunting, especially given how he died, is this, quote, "If anything happens to me, you know who to blame."
Yeah, that sends chills down your spine. Knowing what we know now about his relationship with the industry, with Gotti's accusations.
It's like he was trying to tell us something.
Like a warning.
Yeah, and then you have his lyrics.
Right.
They're full of anger, frustration, this deep distrust of the industry.
Lines like, they want to control your mind, or the industry's full of snakes.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore that feeling of paranoia, that betrayal that comes through.
It really makes you think how much of his music was directly inspired by what he was going through.
It's impossible to say, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a question worth asking.
Definitely. I mean, his music was always so raw, so authentic.
Always.
It's hard not to hear that cry for help in his lyrics.
That attempt to break free from those chains.
And it brings us back to those rumors about his death.
The industry sacrifice.
It's a dark theory.
Very dark.
But it persists, especially among his fans.
It does? What do you think? Is there any evidence to support it, or is it all just speculation?
Well, I think it's important to be cautious with those kinds of theories.
For sure.
We have to separate fact from fiction, right?
Right. We can't just jump to conclusions.
As of now, there's no concrete proof that his death was anything other than a tragic result of his own struggles.
Yeah, but even if we approach those rumors with skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to completely ignore them, given everything we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how the industry can be,
Right. There's a history of exploitation.
of artists being silenced.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when someone like DMX, who was so outspoken, so resistant to control,
Right.
dies under those circumstances,
It's natural for people to wonder if there's more to the story.
looking for those connections.
I think that's part of why we do this show.
Yeah.
Dig deeper, to try and understand the context.
To uncover those hidden truths.
Exactly, because sometimes the official narrative isn't the whole story.
And even if we don't find all the answers, the process of asking those questions is important.
Absolutely. So where do we go from here? We've explored the allegations, the evidence, the rumors, but we're still left with so many questions.
We are, but I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that DMX's story,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what really happened,
Right.
is a cautionary tale about the music industry.
About the power dynamics, the potential for abuse.
It's a reminder that even the most successful artists are vulnerable.
They're often at the mercy of these larger forces.
And it's a call to action for all of us,
Yeah.
as fans, as consumers of music,
To be more aware, more critical.
to demand more transparency from the industry.
To hold those in power accountable.
DMX's legacy is complicated.
He was a brilliant artist,
A troubled soul.
but his impact is undeniable.
His music still resonates with so many people,
And I think his story deserves to be told,
to be examined
to be understood.
in all its complexity.
So as you listen to his music, remember the man behind the microphone.
Remember his passion,